I'm Alison Jane Martingano, and I am inspired by the goodness in people.
All right, and welcome to the Lantern Podcast out of Good Cause Productions at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay. I'm your host, Ryan Martin, and I'm here with a fantastic guest for you today. Our guest today is an assistant professor and head of the Social Research Lab here at UW Green Bay, where she leads a research team of 10 psychology students as they study empathy. She did a fantastic TEDx talk, How to Train Your Empathy Muscles. Please welcome Dr. Alison Jane Martingano.
There's this idea, especially in social psychology, where I work in my field, is that people are bad, or we study people being bad most of the time. We study prejudice, we study hurting others. Um, but I think that we don't put enough focus on when we're good. And I do think, despite all of the horrors in the world, that people are fundamentally good people, and that is what keeps me going every day.
Oh, wow. So has this always been part of your worldview? Is this informed by is this informed by your research, or does it inform your research, or both?
I think it predates. It
Okay.
predates my research. One of the ongoing debates that me and my husband have to this day, it's just one of those things we pick up on sometimes, is that he thinks the biggest problem in the world is that people are bad or people are evil. And I think that the biggest problem in the world is that, on the unpolitically correct way, people are stupid. Or perhaps the more politically correct way, people lack information and education. And so we have this toss up. Is it that people are evil, or is it that people just don't know better? And I strongly believe that it's because people don't know better. And that most people, most of us, most of the time, do what we think is right. Now, we could be completely wrong about what is the right thing to do, but I think most of the time we lean into doing the right thing. That ends up being wrong.
So where did that come from? Because you said it predates you being a psychologist. Where did it come from?
Ooh. Well, I guess possibly, and this is what my husband thinks, is it's a naivety. I I was very lucky in my upbringing, and I've generally found that people are good. If I've left something, more often than not, somebody's come and told me, "Hey, you've left this behind," and there's absolutely no reason for them to give me my item back, and yet they have. I think it did get stronger though when I started studying psychology. So even like the classic studies, so like Milgram with his electric shocks, right? And people are hurting people. But when they were interviewed afterwards, a lot of them talked about how they did it because they thought they were helping science. They were part of this experiment that was supposed to help people know whether punishment improved learning, and they were doing something that they didn't like to do, but they were doing it for good reasons. And I think that speaks to so many people.
And that sort of flies in the face of the common interpretation of that study, right? Which is that people were inspired, or that they were doing it because they were told to.
Yes, yeah, so I actually disagree, and now you know that in my social, psychology class, I actually teach a different interpretation of the Milgram study, is that I don't think it was just because they were being told to, and one of the reasons for that is right at the end of the instructions when the, experimenter is saying, um, "Please continue, the experiment requires you to continue." Well, the last one is, "You have no other choice. You must go on." And that particular instruction, anytime a participant heard it, they actually didn't continue.
Hmm.
They almost like shook them out of it. They were like, hang on, what? No, I do have a choice. I don't have to continue. And so the people that went all the way to the end of the shock generator and gave that maximum 450 voltage shock, they never actually heard that command. They were just doing it because of the polite requests. Please continue. Would you mind continuing, that kind of thing?
Huh. Okay. That is fascinating. So let me walk back a little bit and talk about how, because the what we like to talk about on this show is like how the stories that or the ways you were inspired to become who you are, right? And so your journey takes you from well, let's start there. Where are you from?
I'm from a little town. Well, it's actually about the same size as Green Bay, so maybe a big town
Oh,
in England called Warrington.
okay.
And it's halfway between Manchester and Liverpool, so we're surrounded by these bigger cities. So nobody really goes to Warrington.
Okay.
It's like a flyover city.
Gotcha. And so then you so you studied school there, obviously. Where'd you go to college?
Yeah, so I went to college at the University of York, as in Old York, before, New York. It's a beautiful city if you ever get a chance to go. I did my undergraduate there, and then I did my graduate studies in New York.
Mhm.
Felt I needed to do both.
Traded one York for another York. Okay, gotcha.
Different places. And then I took a quick trip through Washington D.C. for some postdoc before I landed here in Green Bay.
Okay. So then when did you decide on that journey that this is what you wanted to do? That A, this is what you wanted to study, that this is what you wanted to teach? How did you how did that come about?
Yeah. So there's sort of 2 parts to that. So I'm a social psychologist, obviously, and I study empathy as my main thing. I think I got interested in social psychology much faster than I got interested in empathy specifically. So I loved, the Milgram experiments and things like that from an undergraduate, but it wasn't until grad school that, I was working with a professor who happened to study empathy and perspective taking, and I just loved it, and got involved right there and then. And I think a lot of sometimes when we're finding our path, it's the people. And so it's like, oh, this is not just a topic I love, but it also happens to be in a group of people that I like working with. Because there were other groups that I was really interested in cross-cultural research for a while, and they coulda gone that way, but I just didn't click as much with the folks that did
Right.
that.
Yeah, that is so I mean, that's something I've been thinking about a lot here is with our students is who are the people they connect with? Who are the people they identify as their mentors? Because you're right. So I went to graduate school interested in studying anger, but then got really lucky in a lot of ways that I sort of connected so well and worked so well with a particular faculty member there who was studying anger because part of what went right was the fact that we got along really well, that we were on the same page about things, that we were interested in the same in anger in the same way, that we saw it the same way. And so it is about not just the people's journeys aren't just about the stuff, it's about the people that they connect with along the way. And it sounds like that was true for you.
Yeah, it absolutely was. The group that I was working with in grad school, they were interested in how fiction and reading books can enhance your empathy skills and your perspective taking skills. And I got that was probably the genesis for sort of my whole ethos, which is that empathy is this skill that you can practice and you can get better at it. Now, I don't think it's just books that lead to it, but
Mhm.
that was sort of the nugget of the idea that started springing up there. And that's, by the way, why I think that most people are good. So empathy is actually incredibly hard work. Like it's really difficult. It takes tons of resources. And yet most of us try to do it. Most of us try to understand other people and be
Mhm.
empathic most of the time, even though it takes us tons of resources.
Hmm. So why let's talk about the book thing for a second. So this is a common, people talk about this a lot about the value of reading. I think particularly reading fiction, but maybe more to it than that. When it comes to empathy development, share for people why that's true, and maybe start with a definition of empathy.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So empathy is really hard to define. I think you knew that, which is why you threw me that question. So the type of empathy that we're talking about when we're talking about being practicable isn't the emotional part. That is kind of more biologically driven resonance of emotion. The empathy I'm thinking of is understanding the thoughts and feelings of another person. So this can be very simple from I understand that you're angry to really understanding the nuances and complexities of why you're angry, how you got there, what would be best for me to support you and that kind of thing, which is a higher level skill. And children start to develop this around the age that they develop theory of mind, which is where you aware that someone else even has a mind that's different from yours. And after they get that basics, they start developing it more.
Hmm. I'm just sorry to interrupt, but I'm curious, like, what do you think? And you might know this, but with empathy versus maybe feeling, because I always think of theory of mind as being when kids start to feel embarrassment and shame
Mm.
as being sort of a critical part of that. Do you think? How do you think that trajectory happens for kids? And there's probably an answer to this but do you think does embarrassment come first and then empathy come next, or do those things kind of develop along the same lines?
That's a really good question, and there probably is an expert on that that will be cringing terribly at me trying to
Good.
take a wild guess. I'd say they were probably quite similar ages that you're developing these 2 skills, because both of them so those secondary emotions of embarrassment require me to not only know how I feel, but know that there's somebody else judging me, right, broken a social norm of some kind, so you gotta really have an awareness of all the social dynamics. It's kind of what empathy requires too, an awareness of what's going on and what different people might be thinking and feeling in the situation. You
Interesting.
wanted to know about books.
Yes,
Maybe I
yeah.
wanna finish it.
Yeah, you're right. Let's get back to books.
So, there's quite a lot of evidence at this point that reading allows you to develop these sort of empathy skills because essentially you're practicing in this fictional world understanding the thoughts and feelings of the characters.
Mhm.
So, if I'm reading and the character is sad, I'm trying to understand that. The team that I used to work with in grad school focused on the distinction between what they called literary fiction and popular fiction. So, popular fiction is, your Harry Potters of the world,
Mhm.
and literary fiction is this more highbrow level. Writers, I think, also make the same distinction between writerly and readerly fiction.
Mhm.
I've got those the wrong way around with my hand gestures. The idea is that readerly fiction, you just absorb the story, whereas writerly fiction, you have to read into the story and make sense of it. So the evidence is that that kind of more highbrow fiction that you have to really work at and you're part of generating the story is better at improving empathy, essentially because you have to try harder. I don't necessarily love this message because I love popular fiction. I am not a big highbrow reader in any sense. Um, but I can see how it's potentially about finding the right amount of challenge or possibly how you read the book. So you could read a very basic readerly fiction in the sense that it says she was sad and was crying, right? You don't have to put a whole lot of interpretation into that. But you could, if you wanted, as
Right.
you could think, why is she sad and crying? How would that affect how her friends treat her?
Well, that's the question I'm wondering about is how intentional do readers have to be about thinking through some of these things? And like, is that a thing we learn as we're growing up during those
Yeah.
stages?
Unfortunately, I think they do have to be somewhat intentional. And I think this is why empathy is such hard work because it takes a lot of intention. It's usually conscious intention. But I think we do get into a habit of it, especially if you were a child and your parents going and reading a book with you, and then maybe they pause and say, "Why do you think this character was feeling this way? Why do you
Yeah.
that character did that action?"
Do you think reading offers a benefit there that maybe other types of media doesn't necessarily? Like I'm thinking about because I was inclined to do that with TV shows with my kids when we were growing up. Like we'd watch shows together and talk through that. Does reading offer a benefit that those other forms don't?
I don't necessarily think it does. I mean, I guess it could in the sense that it's allowing you to pause maybe more easily, as opposed to having to literally pause the television.
Yeah, and I suspect reading is an activity with that you almost inherently do with your kids because they can't read on their own at the ages we're talking about. Whereas TV, people don't necessarily regularly watch with their kids early on. I did because I secretly love all of those shows, every single one of them. That's not true. Almost every single one.
And there is plenty of research to suggest that TV shows, movies, theater, really any kind of art, they can all be this opportunity to practice empathizing if you choose to watch the show in that way. Now, I can certainly sort of turn off my brain and just sit back and relax and not put any additional thought into interpreting the plot and the characters and just be fed it,
Mhm.
or I can choose not to. And I think that there's just so much opportunity for us to practice empathy. It's just about us taking those opportunities.
Okay, so I'm thinking back to your story and how you got here, and so you are, working in a lab where people are studying this, but your scholarship is a little different than that. So talk a little bit about the work you do and how you became so intrigued by that.
Yeah, so I'm still interested in empathy,
Mhm.
and I sort of have two lines of research. One is the looking at what does and frequently does not help us improve empathy. There's a lot of claims to quick fixes out there. Virtual reality was a big made the news. That was going to be our ultimate empathy machine. Turns out it's not that simple. There are other sort of big fixes today. It's AI. AI is going to help us be more empathic. But in all of these cases, if the machine is doing the work for us, then we're not practicing those empathy skills ourselves. So some of my work is debunking what other people claim, which does not make me very popular
Of course,
in
yeah.
the empathy field. And the other side is trying to work out what does. So I have a line of research right now that's looking into conversations and listening. and whether trying to decipher what someone else is saying and meaning can improve your empathy. And then my whole other line is trying to measure empathy better because right now our measures of empathy are pretty damn terrible.
Is it? I assume it's a lot of
Question mark.
self-report
Yeah.
questionnaires. Yep.
Yeah. So we just ask people to report how empathetic they are. And obviously people like to say that they are. Although you'd be surprised. Some people don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I run into that same problem in two different places. One is emotional intelligence, right? There's no, I mean, there are good ways, but there are that those aren't the ones that are regularly used. The other is with driving. Everybody thinks that they're an above average driver. So whenever I ask people, because I do a lot of stuff on road rage,
Sure.
and so whenever I ask people, how good a driver are you? Scale of like 1 to 100, 50 is average. People will be like 90. 85, like everybody thinks they're a great driver. It's like we can't all be great drivers.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we can't all be empathic. Um, or not, at least not above average.
Right.
I'd say probably we all do have some empathy, unless
Hmm.
clinical populations, perhaps psychopaths, maybe not, but they are defined as lacking empathy. So that kind of feels like cheat.
So tell me about your lab, because said in the intro you work with 10 students right now, but it sounds like that number of flows. What kind of work do you do there?
Yeah, so it does ebb and flow, and it also the work we do ebb and flows based on what my students are interested in. So most of my students come into the lab because they've heard something about it. Maybe they think VR is cool, maybe they think empathy is cool, and they get a chance for the first semester or so to work on one or two of the various projects. But then some of my more senior students who often want to go to graduate school, things like that. They'll propose their own topics to me, and so I end up supervising projects on topics that I am not exactly the expert in. They're a little further out, so right now I have one student who's doing a project on terms of endearment and how the people that use things like, love, darling, things like that to strangers, how they're negatively perceived, and
I
I
hate it when people do that. Sorry, I admit.
No,
Yeah.
that is exactly what she's finding is that we look poorly on those folks.
It's interesting. So this is just a thought of it. So I lived in the South for
Now that
oh yeah. So I went to grad school in Mississippi, and I associate a lot of those terms with my time in Mississippi. That like that is where I was called darling and sweetie and sweetheart.
So you got negative
Fine.
connotations with your time in this?
Well, no, you're right. Fair. No, I mean, I do think though that there was a tendency to it, it always felt a little sort of demeaning in there. Like it felt like it was used in a way that was a little condescending at times, and whether that was the intent or not, but it strikes me as such a Southernism. Um,
It's definitely regional. So my hometown, the go-to term of endearment is duck. Everybody's yeah.
okay.
And it's gender neutral. Everyone's
Okay.
duck. And sometimes I'll see myself saying it, and of course my students here think I'm insane when I say that.
Yeah, that's I was not expecting that. All right.
Fair enough.
Duck. Is there an origin there?
If there is, I
mean, it
don't know
must
what
be.
it is.
Right.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we have others like hun,
Yeah.
occasionally love,
Right.
but duck is the sort of general.
Do bro and dude fall into this
Ooh.
category?
Hmm. I would say yes, but I don't think there's as much research done on that bro and dude and sort of more masculine.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm really trying to be aware in class now. I default saying you guys a lot.
Yeah.
I'm trying to use folks or
Yeah.
y'all to be a little bit more gender neutral. But the research my students finding is actually that it doesn't really matter the gender. So we have a negative view of people who use these terms of endearment to strangers, regardless of their gender or the term of endearment used.
Okay. I will tell you, y'all is the one Southernism that I really grabbed onto.
It's a very useful word.
I like it as a word.
Yeah, you want to talk about a group of people? Y'all. Although I'm not quite sure what is the difference between y'all and all y'all.
Yeah, no, fair. Yeah, I've heard people describe that difference, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But yeah, no, it has something to do with like that's when you're pluralizing it. But I mean, y'all already feels plural to me, but all y'all, yeah, yeah. I don't know. That's a good one. Well, okay, so back to your lab for a little bit because we've been talking a lot about your scholarship, which I know for you is very much tied to who you are as a teacher. So let's talk a little bit about teaching. What courses do you teach? How long have you been teaching them?
Yeah, so my 2 sort of bread and butter courses are research methods and social psychology, but I also teach emotion psych, and just next semester, I'm starting a new information literacy course called Myths of the Mind that I'm pretty excited about.
Excellent. Yes, I am really excited about that one. I'm also excited to talk to you more about the emotion course too, because that's one I used to teach.
Yeah, and I took it
So,
over from you.
yeah,
Made
how
it
dare
better.
you? Yeah, made it better. I believe that is probably true. I taught research methods too, so, but never social psych. So, in fact, I taught the what I consider the opposite of social psych.
Personality?
I taught personality. I know. I
That'll through my heart. I used to teach personality psych, but I put a question mark at the end of it.
Oh, smart.
Mm.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, very good. All right. So, we're going to transition to our 3 questions. Are you ready?
Great.
All right. So these are 3 questions that we ask every guest. I sent you these before the show, so you wouldn't be surprised by them. So
Except I've forgotten what they are by now.
you already forgot. Okay.
Well, I think one of them has this book coming
One.
into it, so tell me that.
Okay, it's good. Well, we will start with the first one. Who is it that you hope you are inspiring?
Ah, yes. So I think on the day to day, I'm hoping I'm inspiring my students. That's probably the biggest thing that I try and do. That's my whole job. That is supposed to be what I think I'm good at. And so I hope that, especially for classes like research methods, which students do not generally come in feeling inspired by, that they leave feeling inspired and that they've taken on something hard and they did it.
Right. Yeah, I always used to think that the 2 things I wanted for that class, one is I obviously wanted some students to really think, maybe research is for me, right? Maybe this is a thing that I'm interested in doing. Because that's how it was for me as a student, right? Taking research methods was a point at which I really, like, shifted a lot of thinking about psychology and what I wanted to do and all that. But the other piece of it is just having sort of a healthy respect for research and thinking about what it means to do a study and how many different variables we try to control for and how much effort scholars put into that. Um, you and I know we've talked a lot about public scholarship, and one of the downsides of doing public scholarship is there's always someone who in the comments wants to point out the flaws in the study. Totally fair, but I think what they don't necessarily realize is that I guarantee the researchers who did this study thought about those things along the way and had controls for those things along the way. And if they didn't, the reviewers who reviewed the study did, right? And so there's this whole process that I think is really important for people to think about.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. And that's something I hope to get to in the new information lit class too, so that they don't necessarily have to be psych majors to start thinking through. If you see something in the news about, I don't know, dark chocolate cures cancer or alternatively gives you cancer, depending on which week you're reading the newspaper, that they can think through, okay, well, what was the study? What study was actually done? Why
right.
do I believe that?
Excellent. Love it.
I should probably say, as we're talking about public scholarship, that although my students are the number one group I'm trying to inspire, the work I do on my podcast and things like that, I'm trying to speak to a broader audience. My hope is people who are kind of disillusioned with the world
Mhm.
and give them a little bit of that hope in humanity and people's goodness.
Right. Yeah, you know what? In a second, let's come back and talk about the podcast because we haven't talked about that too much yet. So, but yes, absolutely. Okay, so question number 2: what is a book, a movie, or a song that changed your life and that you would like to share with others?
All right.
I bet that's why you brought a
That's
book in.
why I bought the book. All right. So this book was given to me actually relatively recently as a congratulations on getting your PhD present. It's
Excellent.
called Utopia for Realists. It's by Rutger Bergman. He's a historian. Um, and it talks through essentially how we can make a better world and that it really isn't as bad as we think it is. In fact, the first line, if I remember rightly, I hope I get this right. Yes. Let's start with a little history lesson. Remember, this is a historian. In the past, everything was worse. And it goes on like this.
Yeah. It does feel sometimes like a tough sell right now to try and convince people that like uh either that things aren't as bad as they think they are, or even one of the things I've been working on lately is like ways like subtle ways people can change their lives to try and, have a healthier emotional life. And the pushback I often get is you can't tell me I just need to get a better night's sleep when the world is on fire, right? And things like that. And I'm not trying to minimize those very real crises, but also acknowledge that even within those, that there are things we have control of.
Yeah, I think I come at it from a slightly different angle, but also get the same pushback. So I have this graph that I have blown up big in my lab. It's the child or infant mortality rate for different continents, and it's just a downward graph. Right, almost to zero. The children that are dying under 5 years old around the world is plummeting in every country. And that's fantastic. And that could be on the news every single day. And yet another day, less babies are dying. But we don't think about that. Also, like say the women's rights movement. Yeah, we've got a long way to go, and in some countries we've got a very long way to go. But look how much we've come in 100 years. I can have my own credit card. I can be a professor. So taking a moment to appreciate how far we've come, and that if we're going to model statistically, chances are things are going to keep getting better.
Right. An acknowledgement that progress is never linear, right? That there's always setbacks and there's
And
always, yes, but that,
it's going in the right direction.
right.
If you take a big enough historical step back. So if you look at the last 10 years, yeah, you're going to see those fluctuations on the graph. But, we're data people. If you really zoom back for the entirety of human history, most major indicators of what we would say are bad things, like children dying, death, disease, war, are actually on the decline.
Right.
And as long as we zoom back enough, you can have quite a happy picture.
All right. Question number 3. What is a piece of advice you'd offer someone who hasn't yet found their way?
Yeah, I thought about this one for a long time once you sent me the questions. Um, and I feel like it's gotta be the people that'll help you. So even if you're not sure of which way to go, I feel like if you surround yourself with good people or people that are helping you, you will ultimately find it. So I think that there's a tendency in America with the American dream to think that, we have to work hard and push and we'll get there. And that sometimes minimizes the importance that other people have in our journey. None of us are sitting here all of our own accord. People helped us along the way. That's how we got here. And it's finding those people that can be the challenge. And that's what I would encourage you to do if you're not sure which way to go. Find the people first.
Love that. That is great, great advice. So let's talk a little bit about the podcast. So you host a podcast called Psychology and Stuff, recorded in this very room, or at least will be moving forward, which is a Good Cause Productions podcast. Tell people about what you do and what you like to talk about.
Yeah, so Psychology and Stuff, as you well know, because it used to be your podcast, is a podcast about psychology, but very, very broadly, we're taking psychology. So it's really about people. And what I do each week is have a different expert come on the show and talk to us about a topic, usually one that maybe there's some misconceptions around. So we might talk, for example, about social media and is it all bad? Or things like that. And I have the wonderful job of just interviewing. So I don't have to bring the expertise. I just bring in the experts to talk to.
That is fantastic. I love it, and I know one of the things. I mean, you mentioned this with your show, or excuse me, with your new class. Like a big piece of what you like to do is debunk not just that, but your scholarship is debunk a lot of the myths that are out there about various things. So it feels like that is carrying over into your show as well.
Yes. Yeah. Debunking is I think such an important thing. It's not enough to just put the correct information out there. We need to correct the wrong information.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Where can people find you if they want to know more about your work?
Yeah, so you can find me on the UWGB webpage. I also have my own webpage, which is AlisonJaneMartingano.com.
All right. If you want to hear more stories of people finding their way, please join our Patreon. You can get access to behind the scenes footage, special episodes, personal shout outs for our supporters, and more. Plus, every dime we raise through the Patreon goes directly to student success initiatives here at UW Green Bay. You can also follow us on social media. That's at UWGBcause. That's UWGBCAHSS. Or follow me at Anger Professor wherever you hang out on social. The Lantern is brought to you by Good Cause Productions at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay. The executive producer is me, Ryan Martin, and the production manager is Rachel Sankey. That music you love so much was arranged by our very own Michelle McQuaid-Dewhurst. Special thanks also to our guest, Dr. Alison Jane Martingano. If you haven't already, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. I'm your host, Ryan Martin. Keep being amazing.